Hey everybody, we are live today with Jason. The open office hours everybody's been waiting for. You were dearly missed last week, but we're going to talk about site security and preventing fraud on your membership site.
I think you, Kim, and Jared did a fine job last week, but I'm excited to talk about security and spam and fraud prevention and stuff of that nature. So I'm looking forward to it. It's like a really important topic. I remember. Oh, hold on, pushing buttons. Am I still on?
Yeah, you're good.
Anyway, all right. So I remember, this is going to make me sound like an old man stuff, but I remember like back in the 90s, in the previous century, I heard there was like a young kid said something like, "Oh, you mean like last century?" It was like, yes, last century. Like I was talking about the 90s, and it's like, ouch. But there was a time where, we had computers and you didn't really need an antivirus software. It was a nice to have. They just tried to sell it to you when you bought your computer. And then at some point, like when the internet became a little more ubiquitous, like as soon as you plugged your computer onto the internet, if you didn't have antivirus, like within 5 minutes, your computer was fully hacked and like people were doing crazy stuff with it. So it was like, oh, like you can't plug your computer into the internet without an antivirus. And so websites are kind of like that nowadays. Like, oh, you can't have a checkout page on your website without a bunch of technology protecting your website from getting hacked and from having spam and things like that. So there's tons of stuff that WordPress does. There's tons of stuff that your host does. There's tons of stuff that we do in the code. But at the end of the day, like, folks in WordPress are running their own websites. They're their own webmasters, and they are responsible for at least understanding all the different components and, setting up a bunch of them. So I think we'll try to go through, I think from the use case of if you have a WordPress site, you just installed Paid Memberships Pro, like what kinds of things do you need to do to make sure that it's extra safe? And we also can chat about some just things to do in general for WordPress. Wait for folks to come on in.
Yeah, it looks like we have about 8 right now.
Yeah. So remember to say hi and wave and mention your name in the chat. I'm in the public chat. Okay.
We had a couple people submit questions. Yeah. So if you're here, give us a shout out. That way we know. Yep. But also on site security and stuff, what's crazy, Jason, is not only are there things that like you have to do to protect your site, but there's also so many scams that they got my grandmother hardcore of like, you need this to protect your computer. And
oh, wow.
It's like, but you don't like that. There's scams to grab your information and steal rather than actually help protect.
Yeah.
Which can be scary.
Someone was talking today, like maybe these are acting up more like when you register a domain or you have a website, you get something in the mail that asks you to send money.
Oh yeah, we were talking to Kim White about that the other day.
Yeah, that's not necessary. I get really, you get a little good at like detecting like the fake stuff, but some of them are pretty good, like the phishing attempts, stuff that comes from your gateway. There's also sometimes like the gateways will send you email from odd domains that kind of sort of like, gateway business name support.com instead of like the traditional domain that, I don't actually, they all have done this. So I'm going to call them all out, but like, so sometimes you get email from Stripe, blah, 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 or PayPal, blah, blah, blah. And it's actually official email. It just looks like spam because it's coming from a different address than you would think it is. Got to be careful. Yeah, wait for the. So we're looking like for Ryan or Gilbert, I think. And their questions were good, so I will go into them. They kind of were like, hey, do you want to talk about the stuff you're going to talk about anyway?
I love questions like that.
Yeah, but it is good to at least wait till they're online here so that when we answer the question, they get their question answered and don't have to wait for the VOD.
But it will be available. Oh. The video will be available on YouTube after the fact, so it's not going anywhere.
Yep. So Gil from El Paso, is that the same Gilbert who wrote a comment in earlier? If not, we can pretend. Let's see here. Let me, maybe I'll go like I'll jump around a little bit. So I think I'll talk about spam and fraud prevention from the point of view of Paid Memberships Pro, and just walk through 3 of the settings that you'll probably want to set up on most Paid Memberships Pro sites. And then I'll back up and talk about some general WordPress and, site security type stuff. And then I'll also talk about, in between there, the question that Gilbert asked about, which is around credit card information, like where does it get stored? And where does the credit card data go? So let me start with a demo of, what you might want to do after you install Paid Memberships Pro. So actually, this is really good. My demo site is out of date, and I have to update it. And this is maybe like rule number 1 for security on WordPress, is keep your stuff up to date. Just about every WordPress core release has some security component, like either, and they're big, they're small security issues. In the biz, so to speak, we talk about attack vectors. And so that's really like an attack surfaces. And I guess that's a clever way to say, like, not all hacks come through the front door or the back door. They kind of need certain requirements to be met. You have to be using a feature, using some other plugin. You have to have registration open, or users with certain permissions who hit certain pages. There has to be some level of, not always, but for a lot of like the obscure security issues that we fix, there has to be some configuration of things in place before they can hack your website. And so lots of releases has a bunch of little security fixes like that, almost every single release. So it's good to upgrade whenever possible. Let me check. I think I have some theme updates too. You might notice, like, also, like, whenever there's a WordPress update, most of the built-in themes have updates as well. I feel like there have been like a few security issues in like the core WordPress themes, but mostly those core WordPress theme updates are really like stylistic changes or enabling settings. Like WordPress 6.3 has new features that weren't thought about, when the 2022 theme came out. So 2022 is updated to support the new features. But definitely, some of those updates are security, and definitely themes like MemberLite and any kind of commercial theme that you're using are potentially, there's a lot of code in there and security issues come out. So update those. All right, cool. So I'm up to date on my demo site. And I'm going to just make sure I have Paid Memberships Pro running. And I do. And I'm going to be running through the things that are on this post here called How to Stop Spam. And I feel like we might link to this from the plugin now. Let me see if that comes up here, either in a banner or security. Let me just put a gateway so we can really test. Sure. All right, so I'll really quick, like, I'm testing Paid Memberships Pro. So when you're in Sandbox, you can say skip this for a minute, kind of just loads you in. I'm not going to set up the webhooks now because I'm on a local site. But over here on the advanced tab, we have a couple of these security features. And I think in some cases we put a notice. Or maybe we're talking about this because it really is like every Paid Memberships Pro website should be using these features, right? You should make sure that the enable spam protection setting is set to yes. And I can go into detail exactly like how that works and what that is. And then use reCAPTCHA at checkout. We can say yes. And we used to say things like, hey, if people are paying with a credit card, you don't need reCAPTCHA because, using a credit card is kind of proving that you're a real human trying to use the service. If you get money from someone, that's kind of better than asking them to complete a checkbox that says, are you a robot? Like, it proves there's a human there. That's not really the case anymore. There's tons of bots running around the internet with stolen credit cards, testing credit cards on checkout forms. And so the reCAPTCHA helps to block that. And actually the reCAPTCHA, like you think of it, like if you know of reCAPTCHAs, it's this, Google feature that often is asking you to, prove that you're a human. The latest version of the Google's reCAPTCHA almost never does that for real people using the internet, because Google knows who you are. Like Google knows everything about you. And so there's a version of this reCAPTCHA called the invisible reCAPTCHA, which is like the most commonly used one. And so it's stronger even than like the challenge whenever, it barely ever challenges anymore. But when it does, it says like, hey, which of these things are, stoplights, and which of these things are bicycles and stuff like that. The real power is like Google's web protecting you from known bots. Like Google knows who all the humans are, and they know who most of all the bots are. And when Google finds a bot on someone else's website, it goes into a shared database, so that if you're using Google reCAPTCHA, it kind of just automatically deflects a bunch of bots. And then makes it a little bit harder for those new bots. Like we call it like an arms race, like the technology to like stop, and the spammers keep creating things. But anyway, in general, you want to say enable the spam protection, which really what it does is it keeps track of how many times there's failures at checkout. And if there's more than 10 within 15 minutes, that looks like shady activity. And then it blocks that IP address for the next 15 minutes. And really like a little bit of a block, usually spammers go away. So if they'll try 10 credit cards on your website, the 10th one will fail. And then they'll try the 11th and 12th, it'll keep failing. And they pay for their computing time, when they're trying to spam. So if they realize it's not working, usually like they go away. So then set up reCAPTCHA. So I'm going to walk through to set up the spam protection. You just say yes, and that's built in the Paid Memberships Pro. To set up reCAPTCHA, you want to say yes on this checkbox. And then we kind of just have this V2. We should actually default to the V3 invisible, but the V2 is there just in case for backwards compatibility. And I think some gateways might like a Braintree used to say, hey, we like V2 better than V3 for some reason. But V3 invisible is what you want. And then you need these keys, and you need to get these over at reCAPTCHA. So what you need to do, we have a link here. So if you click here to sign up for reCAPTCHA, you'll get taken to a page like this. You'll want to sign into the Google account that is, related to your website. And then let's walk through it. So I want to set up, what is the domain? In this case, I'm on like a local site on my computer, and we'll see how that works. I think it'll still work. That's actually interesting. So enter well, this actually is the label. So just how are you, labeling what you're doing. And then here you would add the domain. And again, here's scored based, that like invisible. It's funny they call it scored based. That's like, let Google use all the data that is collected about you to figure out if you're human or not. And then V2 is the more traditional one that, will challenge you. Hold on. Why is it not letting me add a domain? Oh, you got to click here. Okay. Let's see if that works. All right. So once I added that domain, it gives me the key and the secret key here. So you just copy these two values over. And then click Save Settings. And then if I come here, I go to Analytics. So after you have reCAPTCHA connected to your website that way, you'll see information here about how many spam attacks have been blocked, how many people have been blocked, and things like that over time. So that's pretty interesting if you want to see, how good they're doing. I'm hesitant to show you like real info from our sites because it might leak information about ours. But let me go to checkout, and I'll show you kind of what this looks like. $10 per month. And what you'll see down in the bottom corner here, it's in the bottom right corner of the screen, is that little Google, recycle sign looking thing. That means reCAPTCHA is working. And like I said, it almost never, we had someone who like, one of our users one time wanted to confirm that reCAPTCHA was really working to validate, like, would it really prevent spam? And we couldn't pretend to be spam. So we like tried to use a VPN to like log in through Russia. use software to like obfuscate like our the referral, you know, the refer that the browser's coming from. We use like a weird browser. We tried like all this stuff to like, hey, how can I be as shady as possible? And it's like Google just knows, like, Jason, stop pretending I know it's you. You're a human. Like, and so it's even like hard for us. Like, I think we maybe once or twice got it, and I was like, I wish I got on video because that guy just wanted to see it actually break. But it's pretty hard to like even you know, get that to not know that who you are. So now when you check out, this all happens kind of invisibly in the back end. And if for some reason that is broken, when you check out, it's going to give you a message like, hey, you're trying to check out and the reCAPTCHA didn't work. Let me show you the talk about the spam. Are there questions coming in that I should?
There's no questions coming in, but I'm curious on our enable spam protection setting. I know the default is 10 checkouts within 15 minutes. Is there ways to adjust that?
Yeah,
like
there
if
definitely
I wanted
is.
my site to be more secure of like 5 checkouts in 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, exactly. That blog post that we linked to, the how to stop spam, has a link to a code gist that allows you to adjust that. So we chose like a pretty high number. So 10 and 15 minutes. Like if someone, I've often entered my credit card incorrectly. I use my like old zip code by accident, you know, like I don't know, just fat fingered a number while I'm typing it. That'll look like a failed credit card attempt and that'll get logged. So that's actually what's tracking how many times you failed. I'm pretty sure real human beings like don't fail 10 times or more, right? So we tried to be like as, kind of generous as possible. So if you were having issues though, you might want to tighten it up because I did say most of the time the spammer like leaves, like they'll try 10 checkouts. You'll probably see it in your, you could see it in your Stripe logs or potentially they're creating users now. So you'll see kind of phony users in your WordPress admin. Those users are just standard subscribers if you're set up but with the default, so they can't really do anything. And I can even show a way that to manage those users and delete them and stuff. But after the 10th one, then it'll block you. But anyway, if you want to tighten it up, we have a code gist. Some reasons you might not want to tighten it up first, I guess, is most people have separate IP addresses. That's what it's tracking. Like, if your internet at home is a certain IP address. However, like if a bunch of people are on the same like mobile phone connection, like in a room, if you're at a conference and you tell everyone, hey, go sign up for my thing from your phone right now, most of those people on the same network, you might have 10 people on the Verizon network connecting to the same cell tower. It's going to look like the same IP address. Or if you're like at a school, university, and they're all on the Wi-Fi, everyone going in through the same Wi-Fi is going to look like the same IP address. So if you're in that environment where like you have an audience of real human beings in real time and you say, all 10 of you go check out right now, it's going to, the 11th one's going to get blocked and that's going to be a real human. If that's not your use case, then you probably want to tighten this up. And again, it just makes people wait 15 minutes. So if someone fails their credit card check for five times for some reason, they'll get an error saying like, I forget exactly the wording. Maybe we can, after we do this, we can break, fake checkouts until we break it. But yeah, this is the code gist. So let me show you how you would enter the code gist. Back on my website here, I have a plugin called Code Snippets installed. So that's in the WordPress.org repository. You can just go plugins, add new, search for Code Snippets.
One of my favorite plugins.
Yeah, I think there's a couple competitors that come up close to it. So this one, it's called Code Snippets, and it has like the scissor icon. Code Snippets Pro is the company. Like that's the one that we like. So once you have Code Snippets installed, you can go to all snippets. And then you can click to add a new snippet. And we can say like tighter spam protection for PM Pro. And then just copy this code here into the box. That PHP is redundant. You see they add the opening PHP tag for you. And then, the default is 10 times within 15 minutes. So the numbers here is like, what's the limit? And then what's the time in seconds? So 5 times within 30 minutes is what this is, I guess. Let's do like, 5 times within 2 minutes or something like that. And you, how would you think about this? It's kind of actually, the first one is like how many tries to give them. And the second one is basically how long to lock them out. So if you wanted to tighten it up, you actually want a longer lockout period and you want a lower limit. So I'll just stop on that. 5 and 30 minutes is what I'll save. And then you can run this everywhere. It's probably pretty good. I think it really only has to run on the front end, but the default run everywhere here is fine. So you can save changes and activate. If you go to the snippets page, you'll see like this one's enabled. And let me actually try then to like break the checkout and see what it looks like.
I was just thinking like, for myself as a human, if my card fails 3 times, I'm probably not going to keep trying. Like I'll reach out to like your customer support, or I'll find another option or something. Like I'm not going to try my card 10 times on your site.
Yeah, there's probably something else going on. But I definitely like 5 is like, it's a little, I suggest 5, like only really if you're having issues. Like you could almost imagine like once in a while, someone like using a credit card. Oh, that one's old. Oh, this one I messed up. Oh, I don't know. Like it. And yeah, it'll just show a warning and then they can try again in so many minutes. I don't know if, let's see. I don't remember if the warning, let me look at fake credit cards, a Stripe test credit cards. If you look up, so I'm using the Stripe gateway, there's a list. I just, stripe.com/doc/testing of credit cards. And I've memorized the ones that work, but there's ones that break. So if you look at this list, where is this? Sorry, I'm scrolling really fast on a video. Cards by brand. We want ones that break. Weird. This page. Oh, here we go. Decline payments. So let's copy this as like a generic card that's going to get declined. And I'll go back to checkout. I'll put this card in. I'll put an expiration date in. And I'll submit. And Stripe should decline this card. I'm on the test like Stripe gateway. And this is all it says, like when your card's declined, it's like, hey, your card was declined. And you would come back here and be like, oh, I guess I got to put my number in again. And we can count. It should lock us out after, 5 or 6 times. It might be the 5th or 6th time that you get locked out. And you're like, oh, how about this card? Maybe I have the expiration date wrong. And it'll track any credit card decline. So, and that's really what this was built to protect from. If you have some kind of failure because like your password wasn't strong enough, or the information that you entered in the registration wasn't correct, or you didn't check the box for the terms of service, or any other kind of registration check that happens for PM Pro, all that happens before it tries the credit card. And I just said that, but now I wonder if that's actually correct. I think maybe our thing's not. Let me do a terms of service setting. So let's just sure. So just enable the terms of service page. So if I reload, it'll ask me to agree. Let me enter my credit card and then not check the box. See what happens. So yeah, I think, and what's happening, I mean, I don't know, this technology is crazy. Like Stripe is also doing checks and keeping track a little bit on its way, but it really, like for privacy concerns, it can, when you have on-site Stripe checkout, it can't do as much fraud prevention on your site as it wants to. It's kind of not allowed to look at the IP address. It's not allowed like Google to know exactly who the user is. stuff like that. So it doesn't know that much information. So but it does test a credit card, and then so it gets submitted to our server. And when you're on the server, Pay Memberships Pro is checking. So anyway, I think I've lost count here, but that last check, because it didn't do the terms of service, it didn't even bother to check the credit card. But now I will check the terms of service, and I think we're at like 3 or 4. So I think 2 more, it should lock us out. Now, one thing I don't know is I might have programmed in here, like, don't do this to admins. But I don't think we did. Let me try one more time, and I'll see if that's how the code works. There might be like a exclude admins thing, and I really need to log out then and test it as a person who's logged out. Let me see. Yeah, let me look at this code. Let's look at the code real time. So this code is like includes spam.php. Let me see here. Nah. All right, I don't think there's any admin check. Maybe I'm just not good at counting. Gotta love testing in real time. I wonder if the gist is running. I wonder if it's gonna. Let me double check my gist too. Yeah, let me make sure spam protection is enabled. I did that for sure. Yeah, we're just defining these. Oh, you know what? I wonder if this is too late. Okay, so I said code gist, but maybe we need to put this in the WP config. That makes sense, actually. So I think, actually, here we go. Yeah, we have this whole video of me using code snippets. And one of the things is like when you read our gist, like use reading comprehension, don't be Jason.
That's not fair to you.
Yeah. So this code, like maybe this is educational. It's funny. Okay, so WordPress is going to load index.php. It's going to load WP config, and then it's going to load plugins. And when it's loading plugins, it's going to define these spam limits. And then it's going to load like your code snippets, basically. When you say run snippet everywhere, I forget exactly how code snippets is programmed, but it's probably running this around like the init hook in WordPress. So it's too late. It's too late to override it. That's why we say you got to put these in your WP config. So I think the limit I have is really 10, not 5. So I could just keep checking out, and I'm probably getting close to 10. And I guess I can edit my WP config right now. I don't have my screen shared to support it. Close. Maybe I'll show what that looks like.
Suspicious activity.
Yeah, here we go. As what I wanted to see was the message. So it says suspicious activity detected. Try again in a few minutes. So I think if someone tries a credit card 5 or 10 times, depending on your settings, and then gets this message, like they're going to be like, I guess that's fair, right? I wouldn't be surprised if I tried 5 different credit cards that it pinged me for quote unquote suspicious activity. There are ways to change this message if you want through code to kind of have a link to get in touch. We also like sometimes if you're really under attack, I've written versions of this. There's filters. We could show them again offline and like link to them. But basically, in the Pay Memberships Pro code, there's a function called like is a spammer. And so right now you're locked for 15 minutes. If you ask PM Pro, like, is this person a spammer? It's gonna be like, yeah, totally, they're a spammer for like the next 15 minutes until like the activity clears up. And so if you wanted to be harsher about what happens to people who are noted as spammers, you can like block them from accessing the website at all. You can like fail to render the code, like just die and not even load the page for you. And I think if you're under a certain kind of attack, that's probably what you want is you don't even want to waste your resources like rendering a checkout page for them. But basically, since I'm a spammer, every time I I try to check out again, it's going to submit as if I was submitting, but it's not going to do anything. It's not hitting the gateway. It's not creating users. It like everything in Paid Memberships Pro like stops functioning for that person, you know, now that they're marked as a spammer. So that's the spam. Just wait 15 minutes. It'll come back. Is that a...
Can you hear that?
Like an echo? Is that your... Oh, someone driving by your house?
No, it's the lawn guy, apparently.
Okay, okay.
Weed whacker or whatever he's using sounds very sad.
I thought it was getting like a weird echo again.
No, it's people trying to landscape.
You know, we'll try to get a real quick video later about editing the WP config for this. So we have reCAPTCHA, we have the anti-spam protection. We even tightened it up, or we tried, assuming I entered, you know, updated my WP config. There's one more check that is good, and that's using the Akismet plugin and service along with Paid Memberships Pro. So Akismet is a product owned by Automatic that comes installed on every, you know, WordPress website. It's like a default plugin. You know what? Wait, do we not have it in our demo? Maybe we don't have it in our demo. We should probably include it. If you don't have it for some reason, it actually comes pre-installed in WordPress. You can get it from the .org repository. It's called Akismet, AKISMET, and install it from there. And then activate it. It's usually not activated. So then under settings, Akismet anti-spam, you'll come to a page like this where it's like set up your Akismet account. So it's similar to reCAPTCHA. You have to create an account, get like secure keys, an API key, and then log it into the settings here. By default, Akismet is going to protect comments for comment spam. And I think they might do some like registration spam if you have like the default WordPress registration enabled, which shouldn't be an issue if you're using Paid Memberships Pro, because PM Pro is taking over your registration. But yeah, it'll prevent comments and comment spam. I think like bbPress links into it for forum spam and stuff like that. Other tools are linking into it to protect spam. And now Paid Memberships Pro has a PM Pro Akismet plugin to protect your checkout page from spam. So let me show you how to set up the account. So click this button that says set up your Akismet account. It'll load the akismet.com/pricing page. I'm already installed or logged in to WordPress.com. If you're not, it'll walk you through setting up a WordPress.com account at some point, which is useful if you're using plugins like Akismet or Jetpack or other Automatic products. I'm going to choose personal. So this is the pricing page, but it's name your own price on personal sites. And I mean, I guess I'm putting this like on the record. I'm fairly certain that they don't really check like, are you an LLC or not an LLC, or how big is your site, or is it using it? They might have some check, like if you have a site with millions and millions of views using the API keys, they'll send you an email and say, you know, why aren't you paying? But Akismet really is set up, like I'm sure they make decent money from it, but it really is like a public service for the internet, that spam is such a big issue. We need one centralized repository of like spammers and spam email addresses, and that aids all the WordPress sites that are tied into it. So feel free to slide this over to $10 per year, or if you're capable of paying more, if you think you do. We have a business plan for our Paid Memberships Pro sites, but you can set up a $0 a year. And I guess they have you click checkboxes, right? So you have to say that you're not. I just said I'm pretty sure they don't check, but they're asking you nicely. It's fairly cheap, and it's I don't know what, if you don't check these, can you pay less? What happens? No, it's confirm them. But what if I paid $1? Oh, then you don't. Okay, so only if you're paying $0, you have to confirm this. And then this slider's changed. This is really cute too. If you look at this like face, like how happy do you want to make them? Anyway, if this is a private site or something, you can pay $0, or $6 per year is not a lot of money to protect your website from spam. It's still asking for a credit card now. I don't know that it always would do that. So I guess I'm gonna complete checkout just to show you guys. I wonder if, well, we'll see. I wonder if that's like messing up. See, I said like if this breaks our accounts, like I'll have to fix it after the call. Like maybe we just like switched from like business to personal. We'll see. Although I do have like several Akismet keys through the same account, so hopefully it's all just working. Yeah, so I have some other ones here. So go back here. There might be some process where they kind of redirect you back here, but if they don't, you can say manually enter your key and then copy and paste your key. All right, so now Akismet's protecting your site from spam. It's protecting like comments on your blog posts if you have those enabled, but it's not protecting PM Pro signups until you install the PM Pro Akismet add-on. And maybe. So this is a free plugin, so you should be able to install this even without a PM Pro license key. And then just install it and activate it from memberships add-ons, or you can find it on our website and download the zip file. And now it's activated. So now Akismet is going to be protecting your registration form. Let me try to demo that. And I think what we have to do is like come up with like an email address that Akismet's not going to like. I might Google how to, oh, I just loaded, let me log out. I loaded a different window that y'all can't see.
I know that WordPress.com does not like test@test.com.
Oh, okay, cool. Good. I was like, I have to come up with an email address. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now I'm checking out. Let's see. Test@test.com. Let's see if Akismet catches this. And I'll use a real credit card or a real testing card. Let's see. I'm still locked out. I'm still locked out. Let me see. We can come back and test that because it'll and then that'll show that like it really just waits 15 minutes. But actually, what's funny is every time this suspicious activity is detected, triggers, it like resets the clock for 15 minutes. So like if people keep trying, like they're never going to get in. Or in a sense, it's really counting over the last 15 minutes if there's been at least 10. So I forget what the Akismet message is, but it's some kind of warning that like use a valid email address. And what's good about this is like on our site, we used to have a free download and use Paid Memberships Pro. We have a lot of tutorials about how to do that. It's a great idea. Like set up a free membership level on your website, put something behind the membership wall and get people to sign up for free. And we had tons of email addresses that were like, you're an idiot. I'm not going to give you my email at, go jump off a cliff.com and stuff like that. So, we'd see them. They're like these fake users logging into our site just to get the login, the download. And there are ways, we have tutorials on that, on like using, like confirming the email is like the, gold standard, like send them a confirmation email, get them to click confirmed and then let them into your site, or then send them an email with the content you want to give. And we do have an add-on on our site called, the confirmation email add-on that adds that flow, but that's also a lot of friction. So it's like, this is like, we can't have nice things on the internet. It's like, you would love people to just come to your website and it's like, yeah, log in with Google. I'm a good person. Give me the download. I agree to let you market to me and it all goes fine. Like your real users are, just want to gain access to your stuff. And we've really tried to make Paid Memberships Pro as fast as possible. Like as soon as you check out, it creates a user account, it logs you in, it puts you on the confirmation page, it gives you the stuff as soon as possible. Now, if you're getting spammers and bad activity and stuff, it's like, well, now you got to add friction to your website to like make sure that they're not using your stuff. And so the confirmation email add-on sends them an email, like, that like I can deliver email to you and you get it. That's like the best confirmation ever. And then when they click, now they become a member and gain access. The Akismet one, like just make sure they use a valid email. Like it's pretty good. Like we had this running on our site for like a couple months when I first built it, and I had like 0 false positives. So there might have been false positives in the sense of real humans who were trying to log in and it didn't like their email address, like, or at least according to me, none of them came out of the woodwork and used our comments form and said, and I would look through the emails that were getting blocked, and they all looked like obvious spam. It was like obviously not a real email address. But we did like last month have someone who got blocked by the Akismet. We've been running it for like 10 months now. So it works pretty good for if it adds friction to the spammers. We're getting way less spam than we were before, but it doesn't add friction to your real users, which is why I like using the Akismet with the PM Pro Akismet add-on versus like a more formal, like confirm your email address process. Like you have to wait for the email to send, depending on like what's happening on the internet that day or what service provider you have. That might take like 5 minutes to get the email. And like while your customer is sitting around waiting for an email, maybe they're like, well, let me go check out this YouTube video or this competitor's product or something like that. Yeah, we can try the Akismet. Let me talk about Gil is still around. Let's talk about Gil's question. And then also talk about general WordPress plugins.
So Gil's question was, once a member completes a sale, is their credit card information stored anywhere in our website files or on WooCommerce servers or on Stripe servers?
That's a great question. And the answer is like yes and no. So we store some information, but definitely not like the full credit card and not all the information. There's a set of regulations called PCI compliance, which is like a group of like the credit card companies, banks, government agencies, all kind of like working together to set the rules for how credit cards are stored online. We have some pages on our site around PCI compliance. If you search, they might be kind of out of date because we haven't updated them in a while. What's kind of happened in this PCI compliance space though, is the gateways have gotten better about like taking on all the responsibility. So in the past and currently with a gateway like authorize.net, when you enter the credit card at checkout, so if I was using authorize.net and I enter the credit card here at checkout and I click submit, that credit card number does get encrypted if you're using an SSL certificate. Your website is HTTPS. The credit card will get encrypted, sent over the internet, so anyone snooping on it doesn't know what it is. It'll get to the server. The server will then look at it and be like, that's the credit card number. And then the paid memberships pro code secretly communicates with authorize.net and says, is this a real credit card number? Can I charge them? Authorize.net says yes. And then paid memberships pro, what we do is once we use the credit card number, we forget it. So then we like say, oh, I pretend I never knew it. We forget most of it. What we remember, and maybe I have some orders in the database here, are the last 4 digits of the card. And then also like the card type. I'm not sure why this is an unknown card type, but if it was a Visa or MasterCard or American Express, it would say, and then also the expiration date. So I think maybe if we look into the order, we store like the expiration date. So, and this is like in the PCI compliance guidelines, this is like the minimum of, or like the maximum of what like a web software like ours is supposed to know about the user. And these are useful because your customer will call you and be like, I paid you. And you're like, really? Like, what credit card was it? Did it end in 3545? Or like, so getting that information like helps you, organize the orders. Now, as far as I know, WordPress or WooCommerce works the same way. They'll save the last 4 digits, the expiration date, and the card type. It's possible maybe they save different bits. They probably save the same thing. If you're using a gateway like Stripe, now what's happening is, let me see. If you're using Stripe with an on-site checkout, what happens is when you enter that credit card number there, it never gets sent to the server. So when I click submit here, I'm not going to because it's gonna, but when I click submit at the bottom, it actually uses JavaScript in the browser to send the credit card to Stripe. So your web server using Stripe on the on-site checkout version of Stripe bundled with Pay Memberships Pro, it doesn't send the credit card to your server ever. It sends it to Stripe. Stripe checks the credit card and then gives you a token, like this one-time use scrambled token, and that token gets sent to your server. And then Paid Memberships Pro has that token. It's a random string of numbers that I can't buy anything with. It's not a real credit card. It's only going to let me basically process that checkout that was initiated. And then as soon as we confirm with Stripe, hey, are they checking out? Well, then we forget the token even. Then it's useful once and then you can't use it again. But we still save the last 4, the expiration date and the card type. We send that information encrypted to the back end of PayMerchants Pro so we can store it with the order. And then in Stripe, let me just log in off screen here. Make sure I'm in a...
Before you dive into Stripe, Jason,
yeah,
real quick, going back to WooCommerce, specifically WooCommerce subscriptions, they create and manage the subscription from within your WordPress site.
Yeah.
And not the payment gateway. Whereas we create the subscription at the gateway.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like a difference between how like WooCommerce with WooCommerce subscriptions works and Paid Memberships Pro. So they both kind of like store the full credit card at Stripe and store a little bit of information like they can to identify it in the local, in WordPress database. But yeah, the subscription with Pay Memberships Pro, we generate a subscription object in Stripe. And so Stripe is like the source of truth and is who triggers the recurring subscription. So if it's a monthly subscription, Stripe's going to knows the credit card and they kick off the subscription. And then Paid Memberships Pro like gets a webhook update and they keep the orders in sync. So it's like, it gets billed at Stripe and then it sends a message to your website that says create an order because that person just got billed. Paid Memberships Pro sends the email. With the WooCommerce subscriptions plugin, Stripe keeps the credit card, but like WooCommerce keeps track of the subscription. And so basically once a month, WooCommerce will trigger a new payment for the subscription. I'm willing to bet like they're probably in the process of changing that, or maybe have changed that recently, or have different options and stuff. Because the gateways and the banks and the credit card companies more and more like for security reasons, like the control of the subscription to happen at the gateway. There's something called like payment intents, and it's kind of like when the credit card is here in Stripe, like this is a test card, but I could basically like charge arbitrary amounts to my customers, right? So like kind of a secret. Let me see here. If I just create a new subscription forever, add a product.
Give me money.
Yeah. And then like I just put a price on it, add a product. And then I say, hey, start billing today, charge this card, create a test subscription. Oh, one recurring price. Oh, because I'm creating a subscription. All right, I want $1,000 every month. Let me show you how to like steal from your customers. How do we do this? Oh, I have to edit the product, right? What did I do? Wait, let's add a new one. So because it wasn't recurring. There's ways to add a charge too independently. So I could just show you that there's a way to just make a payment, but I said subscription, but it's funny. It wasn't letting me do a one-time subscription that way, which is interesting. Say I only want $100 recurring every month. Let's remove that and say create test subscription. Okay. So this is going to charge that test card $100 and then charge it every month. And like the customer never interacted with my website in any way. Now, I just did that in the test environment. And what really happens is there's a bunch of things in place to make sure like people don't abuse the system that way. Like your credit card company, like you've probably checked out for something with your credit card and they called you or something and it was a valid transaction. You're like, yes, I'm actually here in a different state trying to get gas or whatever. So your credit card's going to see suspicious activity. If you have a $10 a month subscription and then the owner of that website charges you $1,000 on your credit card, there's a good chance like Stripe or your credit card company is going to flag it and cancel it. And users who do that on their Stripe accounts get suspended immediately and Stripe steals all your money or like takes it, right? Like they don't fool around. So I'm not recommending you do this. But it is just to show that like that credit card is stored in Stripe, and your business can do stuff with it. And in reality, if you're creating payments on behalf of your customers and they're not kind of marking them as fraudulent often because, you have, you're doing legitimate work with them. Stripe is not really going to close your account immediately. What it'll do sometimes is like require a payment intent for these kinds of one-off charges. There's like an intermediate flag. Like, this is weird. Like, the customer didn't check a box on your website saying they wanted to pay. I'm just going to double check with them. And actually, if that happens within the context of a PM Pro subscription, there's actually a mechanism where PM Pro sends an email to the customer and says like, hey, did you meet, like, your credit card's just checking that you really want this subscription, click here to confirm the payment. Stuff happens. So anyway, Stripe stores a credit card and then actually can make charges against it. Paid Memberships Pro just stays in sync with the subscription. And so pushing more of that off to the gateway is, basically what we try to do. I'm kind of losing track of the initial question here, but yeah, that's about it. So, like Stripe, when you're checking out on site here, it's going to use JavaScript to like send a credit card to the website. And then the kind of like most secure way to interact with a gateway like Stripe is if you use like PayPal Express works this way, where it's offsite. The checkout happens at PayPal's website. And in Stripe, there's a payment flow option where you say accept payments on this site or accept payments in Stripe checkout. And if you save those settings, and then let me go to checkout. You put all the information here, but the payment, it says like checkout with a credit card here, but there's no credit card form yet. Then when you click submit checkout, if you look at the URL here, it's actually going to go to like a Stripe URL. And so this web page here is served by Stripe. So now you're on Stripe's site, you get the benefit of all their fraud protection. They have a system called Radar, which is used to enable, which is a little bit out of scope for like the whole talk today, but something to look into later. And then you enter your credit card information here and click subscribe. But basically, like, our website never sees a credit card, it never sees a token. And on the back end, we kind of get the identifying last 4 digits type information. But what's also kind of cool is like when you have Stripe checkout, there's lots of different ways to pay. There's there's like 100 literally payment methods in Stripe. And some of them are more or less important depending on like what country you're operating in. But you can pay with like Bitcoin, I think, even, or like you can pay with PayPal within Stripe. You can pay with like all these different payment services. Apple Pay and Google Pay are much easier. Like, it's already integrated into the Stripe checkout page. Cool. So
we do have some like use case questions of
definitely
when to use WooCommerce with Paid Memberships Pro.
Yeah. So I think when you use WooCommerce with Paid Memberships Pro, I think if you're already using WooCommerce for stuff on your site, you should really look into the membership plugin and the subscriptions plugin for WooCommerce. Like, you don't need Paid Memberships Pro probably. You should probably just use WooCommerce and their subscription and membership products. Because both Paid Memberships Pro and WooCommerce are pretty bulky plugins, and we're trying to make it better, but we don't necessarily like trim the fat when you're only using parts of the plugin. Like, that's something that's like on our roadmap, is like, hey, if you're using WooCommerce and PM Pro together, like maybe you don't need to load the checkout code because WooCommerce has it or something like that. And definitely vice versa. WooCommerce is never going to like not load functionality because you're running Paid Memberships Pro, but maybe like we'll do it on our end. So if you're already comfortable with WooCommerce, just use WooCommerce, check out their products. They're actually pretty good. If a lot of people are using Paid Memberships Pro with WooCommerce, or they start with Paid Memberships Pro, we really like, some of it is like how you think about your website. So if the center is getting your customers money, or like checkout is like central to it's a business, right? So making money is pretty central. That's pretty good. But if you think of it that way, like I run a store, you might want to start with WooCommerce as like the central component to your site. If in your mind, you're like, oh, like the members are their center. We have this like graphic of like, there's a member in the center and there's all these things you can do. Like, we really like Paid Memberships Pro is like about the members, and then you can charge your members. You can give access to your members. You can email your members. You can talk with your members. So if the member is the center of your business, you might want to start with Paid Memberships Pro. And then some people are using WooCommerce because Paid Memberships Pro doesn't have support for a gateway. So I would try to avoid that as much as possible. Like I would pay an extra 25 cents a transaction, an extra 0.5% a transaction. If, like you could use one of the supported gateways instead with Paid Memberships Pro, it's better to like not have to load all the, I don't want to call it bloat because WooCommerce and Paid Memberships Pro do a lot for your website. But if you're only using WooCommerce for PM Pro checkouts, you're kind of not using the PM Pro checkout and you're loading a whole separate plugin. You don't need to. So I would avoid it as much as possible, but people do that. Like PM Pro doesn't support like a random gateway. So, but WooCommerce does. You can use PM Pro WooCommerce to connect them. The kind of real reason to use PM Pro and WooCommerce together, the reason we build it is if you're trying to do like membership functionality around your store. So it's one of the only ways to like have membership pricing. So if you have a certain membership level, you get things cheaper. If you have a certain membership level, you get things for free. You can't check out for a product unless you have a membership level. That kind of functionality, it's possible to do through custom code and stuff like that. And maybe that's an answer too, is like just use WooCommerce with custom code. But you can set up Paid Memberships Pro and WooCommerce together with our PM Pro WooCommerce plugin to do that kind of functionality where like, I want to have a members only store, or I want to have members only pricing and stuff like that. That's one of the only ways to do that with WooCommerce. Yeah. And there are people who kind of, and this is like, I think it's fair because I mean, we like people using our software for free, but a lot of people use PM Pro WooCommerce with WooCommerce just to be able to get subscriptions without paying $400 a year. Like you have to buy the membership plugin and the subscription plugin for WooCommerce. So you're like, hey, PM Pro is free. So it's like treating PM Pro like a free WooCommerce extension. And we thought about working in that, but WooCommerce doesn't want us in that business. So you can use it that way, but it's just not like the top of mind for us and definitely not for WooCommerce maintaining it. So it's kind of like a use at your own risk and to make, that it'll continue to be supported that way. I think what we'll try to do is move in the direction where you don't need WooCommerce and you can just use Paid Memberships Pro for free. So hopefully that's the case.
I think one of the use cases, if I'm understanding some comments correctly, is having like a membership and then having like a one-time purchase of a course. And that is something you can absolutely do without WooCommerce, but with just Paid Memberships Pro. So if that's what you're planning on doing, you absolutely can. There's different ways for you to do that on our plugin.
Yep, you can use the multiple memberships per user add-on or the add-on packages add-on to charge for access to a single page or to charge for multiple memberships. Sometime by the beginning of next year, we'll have the multiple memberships per user like built into the core plugin. And at that point, the add-on works. It might even be labeled beta. The issue is like some customizations of your checkout flow like might not work. And it almost like makes sense. It's kind of like the things, like how do you prorate when you're checking out for 5 different things at the same time, or like, things like that. You actually can check out you can't check out for multiple memberships at the same time, but not at the same time, but with the same user can check out for this subscription, then this subscription, then this subscription. And there's ways to kind of have it so it remembers your credit card, and it's real easy for them to just click a couple buttons and they gain access. They can buy things individually on your site. So look into the MMPU plugin add-on for Paid Memberships Pro if that's kind of like the use case you need. But yeah, I mean, there's add-ons and extensions for WooCommerce that are like pretty neat, and there's ones for PM Pro that are pretty neat that WooCommerce doesn't have. And so sometimes you kind of like you want both of those features. And we like to hear about those things like, hey, WooCommerce has this neat plugin. Could you guys do this without WooCommerce? And we'll be like, yeah, let's look into doing that.
The plugin that Jason is talking about right now is the multiple memberships per user add-on.
Yeah. We call it MMPU for short a lot. And basically it just adds groups. And then you can have some groups where like this base level, they can only choose one level from that group. That's like standard Paid Memberships Pro. Or you can have groups where you can have, it's a la carte and you can buy as many as you want. And so the checkout screen, kind of looks like this, like you're adding, removing. It's not a shopping cart, but
you're not showing, you're on your.
Oh, I'm not showing the screen?
Activity. No,
sorry.
We just see suspicious activity detected.
Oh, sorry. Let me get it. You see it now. Okay, sorry. So this is the multiple memberships per user add-on. And then the screen looks something like this, where you have different groups. This base level group, you can still only have one level within that group. So that's like, bronze, silver, gold, and it removes the level. But you can have these groups where there's like a la carte levels. Basically, you can have as many levels in that group as you want. So that could be like your courses or your add-ons and things like that. And then at checkout, people can kind of, choose multiple. I think these screens might be out of date actually, but you can check out for one level and then check out for another level. And we're in the process of merging this into the core plugin, so it's even easier and works better. It's part of a big update.
The other question that we got ahead of time from Ryan. Ryan is here now.
Great.
So Ryan submitted a question, says, what tools should be used to easily determine if there have been a security incident on your site? I've seen friend sites where it's easy to tell because their site was defaced, but are there tools you can use to determine if someone is trying to exfiltrate data or attempt any other silent attack?
Yeah. So there's a few. I mean, I'll run through them. Like actually, like a high level answer to this question is usually your host, particularly if you have like a managed WordPress host, has stuff that's doing this. So there's a number of security plugins. There's a number of services that kind of help manage security on your site. There's like firewall plugins and firewalls. You should check with your host, and it's good to use like the combination that your host is familiar with, maybe you're already paying for, is setting up, stuff like that. Like Securi is owned by GoDaddy now. So I think almost every GoDaddy plan, maybe you have to opt in for like cleanup, but every plan has some form of like security running on it probably. Don't quote me on that. Maybe it's a paid feature. But I mentioned Securi because they have a really cool tool, which is like, maybe it's hard to find on their homepage. There's like site check. Here, yeah. So sitecheck.securi.net. If you put your domain in here, it looks just on the front end of your website for malware. And actually, the malware is really clever. So I've had a couple sites that got malware recently. And in the past, when you would go to the homepage, it would like redirect to a Viagra ad. And you're like, oh, crap, I've been hacked. And now they're set up where they're like, hey, I know, like if you're logging in from the United States or the place where the owner of this website probably lives, like, quiet, stay in the corner. Don't let them know that there's malware on his site. Your site works exactly as intended. And it has code in there that's like, oh no, this is someone like in a different country or like, coming from a certain source. There's ones also that like create pages on your website. So it's not in your standard flow. It just uses like your domain authority. It creates a page called like yoursite.com/Viagra. I don't even know if any of these malware, like are promoting Viagra anymore, but whatever the thing they're making money off these days, it's like,
that's so 90s.
Yeah, I'm putting a bad name for Viagra. They're like, Jason, it's actually like whatever. But they'll create pages on your site that you don't see. It's not like in your, visual like sitemap of your website. So you don't even know it's there. But then they use that link. They link, as if it's their own website. They're like, hosting stuff on your server, and they use your domain authority to like get backlinks and weird things. So a lot of it's hidden, but this Securi site scanner knows like all the tricks, and it's going to look at all the nooks and crannies of the front end of your website. There's a version of Securi that you can also run like from WordPress and from your, console, the server level, and it looks for stuff like on the server side. Another tool that I like a lot is, Blog Vault. So I like the folks behind Blog Vault, and they, so they have it's a backup solution and a security solution. It's kind of nice to have these things together, because one of the things you can do if you got hacked is like revert to a backup that's not hacked. So Blog Vault has, like a backup and a security functionality built in. And it, has scanners and stuff like that. And this is a good tool. And actually a lot of hosts, I forget which ones, but they're using Blog Vault built in, and you don't have to pay for it, or you get it for cheaper or something like that. So look into that. The other, yeah, so that's kind of like detecting what you could do. One thing I do on my site that I might do a demo of or a write up later is I create a Git repository of my WordPress files. So, you know, I'm going to probably confuse you by like going to GitHub and talk about Git, but I'm just going here because this is what like a WordPress install looks like. It has WP admin, WP content, WP includes a bunch of PHP files. But if I was from the command line, I'm kind of like Git init, Git add, you know, star or dot, I forget what it is, and then Git commit. I create a Git repository of everything in my WordPress folder. I actually ignore a couple stuff, so I leave the config file out. And I think I leave the content folder or different parts of the content folder out because it just like takes up a lot of space. And then actually, there's a security step that you want to do if you do this. Hold on, what is it, like htaccess, like hide Git folder? It's probably like a good, yeah. So I forget, I don't know if I've ever written this up, but you want to, in your htaccess file, like not let people navigate to your Git folder. Because actually, if you create Git in your root folder of your WordPress site, that's a security vulnerability itself because people can kind of like navigate to the Git repo. So anyway, I'm getting really technical, but if you are a programmer and you use Git for your day-to-day work, it's not a bad idea to like put Git in version control on your site. Make sure you hide that Git folder so that people can't like look at your source code through the Git repository. But once you're set up that way, what's cool is you go into your site, you hit Git status, and it tells you all the files that were changed or any new file that was added. And so what I do is when I'm updating, I'll run Git status. I'll look for things. I'll make sure there's nothing there. Then I update, you know, my plugins and things. And then I commit all the new stuff to the repository. And if at any time I suspect a malware, or you can even check it, you could write a cron job to check it. It'll run Git status and be like, hey, there's a new file. There's an edited file. That's the kind of thing that the hacks, and you'll see it. It's kind of like it inserted this malicious looking code here. Yep. And so, yeah, if you have some technical skills, that's a good way to do it. And that's a little bit of what, you know, these services are doing. The other thing I'll say is like, so a lot of these run on your server, or some of them run like in WordPress. I think like WordFence is a popular one. And I think Blog Vault and the security plugin, they all run some version of a firewall like inside of your WordPress site. And maybe the way to explain a firewall is, so if I was actually, one of the basic things almost all these firewalls do is if I'm logged out and I'm trying to log in, you know, I'm on the login page, I submit to the login, it's keeping track of that. And if someone submits to the login and it's like a known spammer IP address, the firewall is like, yeah, I'm not going to let them in. Or if a plugin is hacked, I talked about attack vectors at the start of the show. If the attack vector is through like a form or a certain parameter or something like that, all these firewall plugins and services kind of know like what suspicious looking parameters. There's an old technology called XML RPC. It's bundled and activated in WordPress. There's some plugins. There's a really good plugin that just disables it that you probably want to run. I think a lot of security plugins have that built in. But the firewall, like if people are hitting XML RPC, if you ever like watch the activity log from your server, you see like all these kind of like weird login attempts for software that you don't even own. So it's looking for like PHP MyAdmin logins, and it's looking for like other tools that you maybe don't have set up. The firewall is going to see that and be like, that looks fishy. I'm just going to block that person. And so that's basically what what the good firewalls are doing, among other things. And there's all kinds of versions, but there's a couple, like if it's running in WordPress, what's happening is all that logic of like, shoot, they're trying, before I load the page, let me figure out if this is suspicious activity and then load the page. That slows your site down. So what you kind of want to look at is Securi has a service called Securi Firewall, and we use that one on our site. And that firewall sits like outside our server. So at the DNS level, so the DNS is like your domain of your website is like paidmembershipspro.com. What website should I load? Before it even goes to our server, it goes to Securi. And Securi does all that check, like, is this suspicious? Is this a known scammer? Is this a DNS or a DDoS, denial of service attack? and it kicks those people out. It also kicks out some people who are like uploading code to our support forum or trying to use our contact form and maybe use like a weird term, or maybe they're coming from, you know, Nigeria, Russia, or some of these countries that are, you know, I mean, the people from these countries are lovely, but just whatever, like a lot of hacking activity comes from certain countries, you know, and if your business is not in Russia or China or Nigeria, a lot, like if it is focused on Australia or the United States or United Kingdom, like you're like, I'm only serving people like in this country. It's not a bad idea at the DNS level to kind of block all countries from accessing your website. It's kind of sad that that's the case, but it really is like if you ever look at the logs, it's 99% people trying to hack your site and 1% using your site, something like that. I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating, but it's not that much of an exaggeration. So anyway, the firewall runs at the DNS level and it takes like 1/10 of a second or maybe 2/10 of a second instead of like maybe 2 seconds to kind of scan the traffic before it loads the site. So security firewall. Another like a super popular one is Cloudflare. So Cloudflare is also like works like security firewall and does a bunch of other stuff. But you might see this when you go to a website. It was like, hey, I'm checking you out. It doesn't do that to everybody, but Cloudflare on a website will, you know, it kind of protects your website before they even get to the server level. And so that's a good one. There's another plugin, maybe like an honorable mention if you're not, I guess I had a couple that were related. And there's one called like Limit Login Attempts Reloaded. There's a few versions of these, but the reloaded one is pretty good. And that basically works on your WordPress server. If people are trying to log in a bunch of times, it'll block them out. So it's just like that checkout denial of service that PM Pro has, but only on your login form. We keep toying with the idea of building that feature in. It's pretty scary for us to do that, because what happens is if the admin gets locked out of the, you know, if the admin accidentally tries to log in 5 times and gets locked out, that's like a really bad situation. And Limit Login Attempts Reloaded, like you can interact with their service so that if you get locked out of your own website, you can just log into their website and then it's like, hey, it was you? Yeah, okay, I'll undo it. So they have kind of like a way to get back in that is pretty complicated, and that's something we would build. But yeah, so that's a good one. And then another one is like, that's because we're talking about security related. There's a lot of these security plugins have 2-factor authentication. So 2-factor, you would know, like when you log in, it also, you need like Google Authenticator or an email or your text message, like to enter a code to log in. And so 2-factor is really, if you enable 2-factor for like the admin accounts in particular on your website, it really helps block a lot of these kind of 0-day exploits rely on being able to log into your website and do activity as an admin. And if they have to also 2-factor, they're not going to be able to get in a lot of cases. There's a ton of these. The one that we like is 2-factor by plugin contributors. And I always look for my boy, George Stephanus here. He helped build this, but a ton of Aaron Campbell's like on the WordPress security team, John Blackburn, all these folks, like really strong core WordPress contributors. But this is a plugin that all it does is 2-factor. So you enable it per account, and this is what we use on our sites. And you know, you have to use Google Authenticator or text message or an email as a secondary option when you're logging in. Yeah, so I'm kind of running through the different security things. I wonder if we should try to check out. It's been 15 minutes, right?
It's been longer than 15 minutes.
What are we going to do? Test at test.
Test at test, yep.
Oh, let me see, because I'm doing Stripe checkout. It should still block it. Nope. Wait, maybe. It let me in. Wait, no. Did I not enable it? Interesting. Are there other, well, I'm trying to figure this out. Are there other questions that came up?
Yeah, there's a 3-part question. So we have the PM Pro and are using the add-on to have the short form to register for PM Pro. I'm not sure which add-on that is, though.
Oh, wow.
But
yeah.
Maybe you know. But to continue the question.
Yep.
However, when I use reCAPTCHA with the checkout page, it worked well. But on the add-on, it's not integrated with that. And basically, it broke the funnel and sent the user to reCAPTCHA again on the checkout page. Is there a solution for that? Or any workaround, as we can't use the reCAPTCHA as long as it will work?
I
don't know.
I think I need to Yeah, so we have one called sign up shortcode, which might be what they're using. If you're using like the sign up component of register helper, that's out of date and won't work. But the newer version is called sign up shortcode. But it allows you to do stuff like this, like in a popover of like, you know, just an email address to log in. So if you know, by default, PM Pro has a checkout page that's like the form to log out. But if you want to like embed it in a widget or a component somewhere else, use this. And I remember fixing reCAPTCHA for this, but maybe a recent update broke it. And I'll just hand that off to the dev team and we'll look at it and try to have it fixed for it next week. I can imagine why it would break. I remember it being really finicky. And actually, now that you say that, I'm kind of like, we were testing like a reCAPTCHA update recently, and it is like, what are all the different, like, not random, but kind of different ways like reCAPTCHA could break. And I think this is one of them. So maybe we just got to get the devs on that. I feel like we had like a recent update to reCAPTCHA. And maybe we didn't test all the different versions of sign up shortcode with it.
So dev will look into it.
Yeah. I actually I like to dig into some bugs on camera, but I know this one's going to be like kind of gnarly. So I'm not going to.
I think that's pretty much all the questions that we had.
It's kind of weird that
yeah, but you do have some homework, Jason, aside from dev looking into this bug. You have 2 videos to make.
Okay.
We need a video for the updating the WP config, because that would be interesting to like know how to do. I don't know how to do that. And then your other homework is creating a video on how to use Git to create version control for sites.
Yeah.
Just because people like don't know how to do that.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Should that person open a ticket for the reCAPTCHA?
User sign up? Oh, the reCAPTCHA? Oh, yeah, reCAPTCHA with the sign up shortcodes plugin? Yeah, they can. That'll be a good way to keep track of it and make sure we get back to you.
So yes,
and
please.
You can kind of stay tuned to like our updates. I'm tempted to I'm also going to double check like why it allowed me to use test@test.com.
Well, you're also not on .org or .com. You're on a local, so that might be different.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, what is it? Yeah, it should still be checking, I guess. I wondered if it mattered like the Stripe checkout. Like it's kind of like, but it shouldn't have. It should still be checking Akismet before it goes to Stripe. Let me see. And maybe if I kind of get even like more weird, or I was like, I am a spammer, or is like test plus I am a spammer, I'm a spammer, or is like test.com?
Because that's not suspicious.
What it's looking for. Yeah, I don't know. Like Akismet, the thing is too, like Akismet isn't like looking, and I think it's weird. Actually, I'm kind of weird. I don't know what to do with this with the plus. I'm pretty sure the way Akismet works is it keeps track of which email addresses and usernames and names and combinations are spam, and it's not kind of like it's not I mean, maybe I'm wrong. It probably does a little bit of this. It's not like that looks shady to me. I think it's spam. And actually it does have a score. And I think by default, when we were testing, like whatever the default was pretty good, but there's a way, maybe that's like another gist or demo. Cause I heard someone else, and maybe this is also like it's country to country specific. Like if you are in Nigeria or Russia or China and you have a WordPress site, it's kind of like the default spam detection is like being extra harsh on you, and you have to like adjust it down or up. But all right, let me see if this correctly marks me as spam here. So I think it like, yeah, but maybe I don't really have it working for some. Oh, wait, did I activate the, I did. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I'm going to test this out. Why it's not.
They just let you sign up, Mr. I'm a Spammer.
Yeah. Did I enable the add-on? Yeah. It should. I'm going to debug this and double check. Like, that's really weird. But it could also be like, I wonder if I'm pretty sure we send like a lot of information to Kismet. I'll have to look. Actually, let me see what we're doing. We can look at code quick. It could be kind of that case like reCAPTCHA, like it's sometimes harder to test than you would think, because it's like, yeah, I see what you're doing. You're on a dev site. I'm not actually going to check, like stuff like that. And there's like ways to debug this too. So
while you're looking at the code, and I still have a few people watching, our next open office hours will be October 12th with Jason and Chris Badgett from Lifter LMS. We will be diving into how we have PM Pro and Lifter streamlined now. So that'll be cool.
Sweet. Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe what's happening here, like, so this is the data we send to Akismet. We send their IP address, the refer, the name of the blog, the permalink, like the page they're on. And I think possibly in part of the Akismet logic is like, you're on an obvious dev site. You're from an IP address that, like, I don't know, doesn't look like a spammer. It's not crossing that threshold that we have, like it's similar to the, the 10 minutes or 10 attempts over 15 minutes or something like that. We set like a pretty high bar, and in practice, like where we set it at the default is like a pretty good job of blocking like 99% of the spam and letting barely any in. So I think it probably detects we're on a dev site and then doesn't actually register it as spam.
Jerry is asking, can you talk a bit about geo-blocking IPs from certain countries? What are good tools, sites, or plugins for that?
Yeah,
and Ryan is suggesting Scurry, which you already Scurry.
Okay.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah. Okay. Security and maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would suspect that Security and Cloudflare, for using those at the DNS level, have ways to block. It's like a firewall thing to do. So any kind of firewall tool should have a tool to do that. And yeah, it's kind of it's a little tricky. Like you don't want to necessarily block all countries from possibly being your customers. You might be surprised, at people who are coming. But again, like if you really suspect, like it's especially if you look at the logs, like it's just, if you block, and it's not like it's hard for like these spammers and fraudulent tools, like they use VPN type bouncing around proxies, and the traffic doesn't necessarily look like it's coming from a Russian IP address, but traffic coming from a Russian IP address on a site that isn't actually used by Russian folks is almost definitely like spam. So yeah, like I hear of a lot of people that do that, and it kind of saves them a lot of grief. So I don't think we do that. Yeah, but it would be the kind of thing, of rule you would put in your firewall. So, Security or Security Firewall or Cloudflare. If you're running like a firewall on your, sometimes there's firewall rules at your host. And you could talk to your host about that. Like you could block specific IP address ranges. What's good about security and Cloudflare is I think the service in there is kind of like block this country and it kind of figures stuff out for you. Otherwise you have to do the research of like, what's the, I don't know, like IP range for Russia, I don't know. So you have to figure this out. And it's kind of like, is it, I forget what there are. Yeah, I don't know. And it's kind of like these IP addresses, and it's in a range too. So like, so these first three numbers, like the IP address is kind of like, you could imagine it like the number on the left is kind of like bigger. Like, it's kind of like this region of this is, I don't even know. I think they might be kind of continental, like this whole continent, like kind of has a range of the first bit. And then the last bit, there's up to 255 for each time. So anyway, it's a range. So if you block 102.3.8.250.* it gets everything in this whole range. Actually it's, across a couple of them. So this is a list, and I don't know like how they keep this up to date. This is quite the list. So I think it would be like pretty annoying to put that in by yourself. But I think like,
Russia's a big country, so that would take like, I feel like that would take forever to input all of that.
Yeah. Or you put in like a range that kind of like it, I don't know, it gets like most of Russia, but there's also some other IP addresses that are kind of close by that are getting blocked that you might not want. I don't know. But yeah, look at whatever firewall you're using. Like they almost all have some kind of tool like that.
Well, that is all the questions I have for you.
Sweet. Thanks.
And here comes the lawnmower again.
Good timing. All right, thanks. I got my homework. I'm gonna bring Chris Badgett on in a couple weeks. It'll be fun. Thanks, Sam, for producing. Thanks everyone for watching.
See you next time.
See y'all next time. Thanks.